The Louisiana Restaurant Association presents the We Live to Eat podcast. It is said in Louisiana that a great deal of our culture revolves around food. The We Live to Eat podcast will explore Louisiana's restaurant industry one episode at a time. Laissez les bon temps rouler.
Welcome to another episode of We Live to Eat, and I'm here with the esteemed and one of my favorite people in the whole world, Chef Brigtsen. How are you?
I'm doing great, Wendy. Welcome to Brigtsen's.
Awesome. I've never been here on a Friday at lunch and where there wasn't any food. But yeah, I am a firm believer that Shell Beach diet is the thing that we all need to be doing. You have a few signature dishes. Can you tell me about the Shell Beach diet?
Yeah, the Shell Beach diet is our version of the seafood platter, which is a very popular thing here in Louisiana. But we've never had a fry station. So I wanted to create something that was, featuring all the wonderful seafood of our area, but not fried.
Right.
So we put together a format, really. It would have a grilled fish with a sauce, two kinds of baked oysters. You might have oysters Rockefeller. Oysters LaRuth was always on that. That was a dish I created in his memory. Freshly baked to order shrimp or crawfish cornbread with smoked corn butter. Mm-hmm. And then a couple little side things like maybe a jalapeno shrimp coleslaw, crab meat and Creole tomato salad was one component. And those things kind of rotate, but that's the basic format. Yeah. And, the Shell Beach diet, of course, is a take on the South Beach diet, which was popular at the time.
Can you tell people who are listening that may not get it, like where Shell Beach is?
I guess some people don't get that. Shell Beach is one of the prime fishing areas in St. Bernard Parish. For generations, some of the best seafood in the world comes from Shell Beach and Hopedale and Delacroix Island, that area.
And there are little white shells.
Yes.
That's like they dumped them out there so they could make it like a boat launch.
They really are white shells.
So another thing that you say, and I think is hilarious, and I think of it often when I don't have a lot of color on my plate, there is something that you say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of times, Wendy, I'll be thinking about a dish and trying to build flavors and build the dish in my head, and then I make it and I plate it up and it looks terrible. It's not Instagram food, let's put it that way. But I do have a saying about food and cooking, and that is, in cooking, color is flavor, and brown is the color of flavor.
Brown is the
when
color.
you brown something, you're creating flavor, whether it's browning onions or browning a steak. You're creating flavor, and that's a very basic, fundamental technique that I learned from Paul Prudhomme, frankly.
Okay.
Taking your time in the first steps of a gumbo, browning the vegetables, which creates a foundation of flavor.
Searing the meat.
Seasoning,
and then letting it hit the hot oil, giving, turning it over, giving all sides like a sear, and then deglazing the pan, pulling it and then deglazing the pan and putting all your vegetables in there. I deglaze with a lot of different,
yes.
That's what I use liquor for, basically.
Yeah, and that's natural flavor. Yeah. When you brown protein, like brown a steak or roast beef or roast pork, what you're doing is the little brown part, the brown part of it is when you brown it, the protein itself is converting to a natural glutamate.
Okay.
So it creates what we call umami, or depth of flavor.
Okay.
And so that's why when a roast beef comes out of the oven, you want to grab those little crispy ends.
So we call them greamies.
I like that.
Because my husband's a Cajun from Basile, which is right over from Opelousas. And that's, you want to get the greamies off the plate.
Yes.
Because that's where all the flavor lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you might call that debris,
Right, exactly.
Originally, debris was the when you roast a beef to make roast beef po' boys, you slice up the beef and all the grimise are left on the plate, and that's debris.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The most flavorful part.
And salty and pepper. If you got salt and pepper on it, that's where you're going to find it, like in high concentration levels. This is so good.
I am the king of brown food.
So one of the things, I follow you religiously on social media. I think you're brilliant, you're funny, you have this rapport with other restaurateurs like Larry Miller over at Bywater American Bistro, and he's got his own sense of humor. I think, can you talk to me a little bit about like when you got to the level of being able to laugh about things like and enjoy the job and not take it, so you can still take it seriously but to have fun on top of it, because you have fun.
Yeah, I think that's important, and going back to something we talked about before, I think that's what I got from my father.
Yeah.
He had a terrific sense of humor and extremely original. And he had a saying, lose your friends, lose your money, but never lose your sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And smiling and laughing really does make you healthier, I think. And Larry and I met at a fundraising event. Lark in the Park, which is where, these events are where chefs kind of get together and have some fun. And he and I became fast friends. I had been following him on social media. He's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Nobody puts more planning and thought into his post than Larry Miller.
He likes to troll the Yelp reviews. So if you give him a bad review or you steal the copper bunny, all bets are off.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back, and he does it with a wicked sense of humor. And of course, Chef Nina Compton, his wife, I just admire so much. And I think what's important in the restaurant landscape of New Orleans is that Chef Nina Compton, who's from the Caribbean, St. Lucia, I think she is as Creole as I am. Mm-hmm. I'm over here making trout meuniere, bread pudding, pecan pie, gumbo, and she's doing curried goat, for instance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we had an interview many years ago with Gun and Garden magazine, and the premise was I represent Old Creole and she represents New Creole. And that's what I said. I said, she's just as Creole as I am. Creole is a fusion cuisine.
Right, totally.
And based many, many cultures, and it's continuing to evolve as the demographics of New Orleans evolve.
It's always been that way. And
always.
That is what is so exciting about cuisine here, and watching it within your like early 90s, I kind of started to eat in New Orleans, and I've seen it evolve throughout my life. And you see the emergence of like sushi restaurants. We never had that before Katrina. We had one or two here or there, but they were everywhere. And then we had the Vietnamese. You didn't have to go to New Orleans East. They brought it uptown for you. You paid a little bit more, but you didn't have to drive out to another world to go get a banh mi sandwich.
Exactly.
So I've seen that. You've seen that tremendously from, Chef Paul Prudhomme with that black and red fish. That was just in 1984.
Right.
So then you have everything before that, and you worked with Miss Ella Brennan, and she talks about they were really cooks that were that's what they did. They cooked for people, and they cooked in restaurants, and, it's really just in that time span has just, it's like the iPhone in food.
It's true.
It's come light years.
It's true. And Brigtsen's has been here 36 years, and I've seen so many changes. And one of them is, when we opened and got our first review, which was very good, Gene Borg wrote it, and used the phrase that I was reinventing Creole cuisine, and I'm like, I am, I'm
okay,
just,
if you say so.
I'm just doing what I know, and follow my sensibilities, and I was flattered to death.
Yeah.
And 36 years later, I think I'm still doing the same thing, the same approach, but now I'm viewed more as the keeper of the flame.
Right.
I'm more of a traditionalist, which is a mantle I carry very proudly.
Yes, and you also, when you were inducted into the LRA Hall of Fame, this was before, the LRA was fancy and we had all this, equipment to record things at an event. You, in your acceptance speech, you said this line, and our CEO, Stan Harris, says it all he refers to it quite often because it had such a depth of meaning that you tell it, say it.
Well, and I still believe it.
It's fabulous.
When I wake up every day and put on my white chef's jacket, I'm putting on 300 years of history, 300 years of culinary and cultural history here in New Orleans. I'm fourth generation New Orleanian. I mean, it's in my blood. Yeah. And the cooks, the chefs that I learned from at Commander's Palace, you'll never know their names. They were anonymous. But for generations, this is how Creole cuisine was passed on. And I am so grateful that I was part of that chain, that
right.
continuum of knowledge. We didn't cook with recipes.
You cooked for taste and
right.
Yeah. And
that's how I learned from Chef Paul too. They took the time in their very busy day to show me how to do things, like one bit at a time. And so you gather this wealth of knowledge of how things have been passed on all these years. It's just beautiful.
Well, I grew up watching Justin Wilson because I love, the accent got me, but also he was showing you how to do the basics.
Yes.
To make it something like delicious that you would enjoy by yourself before you shared it with the others because, it was that good.
Yes.
And you wanted to keep it that moment for yourself and your accomplishment that you've done something. That's how I feel when I cook sometimes. I'm like, oh, look at this. I got that from him.
Yes.
But that's how a lot of us, I would say, that were in any way interested in cooking kind of learned from public access.
Absolutely. And Justin was a pioneer introducing the world to Cajun cooking.
And then Chef Paul had his show forever, and I remember my grandmother watching it, although she, God rest her soul, she never took any of their advice. So when it got to me being able to cook for myself and taking what I had learned, like, it was really cool. And then I married a Cajun guy, and then he was like, "This is how you do it." And he did it for a while, and now I do it. So he taught me how to cook, and of course my exposure to people like you, and you really take joy in the education and the mentoring thing in your career, and I always admired that. Can you tell me, you run this restaurant, you are still here every day, but you have a whole other career that parallels this, still in the industry, but from an education perspective. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in that
Absolutely.
realm?
I started teaching cooking classes before Katrina. A brilliant New Orleanian named Judy Jurasich, who's no longer with us, had a vision to open a cooking school. It was called the New Orleans Cooking Experience. She had spent 6 months in Florence, Italy, and took these immersive half-day cooking classes or full-day cooking classes. And why doesn't New Orleans have this?
Right.
So that format was a chef like me at an open kitchen cooking before 10 people sitting around the island and demonstrating the entire menu, and then they would sit down and dine. And it was wonderful. I actually did that for 15 years, every Thursday night for 15 years.
Yeah.
But right after Katrina, I saw how things were changing and could change in New Orleans, and I felt compelled to do what I could in my humble way to protect and preserve our culture and our way of eating. And I called my friend Randy Sheremy up at the John Fo's Culinary Institute. And I said, "Randy, I want to come teach. Do you have a spot for me?" He said, "Oh, yeah, Frank, we need somebody to teach classic French. We need somebody." I said, No. I'm not looking for a job.
Right.
I want to come up there and teach what I know, what I learned from Paul Prudhomme. I want to do what I can to ensure that this next generation understands the value of traditional and contemporary Cajun and Creole culture and cuisine. And so they made a spot for me, and I've been doing that for 15 years.
Well, and I mean, you look at, that school was the first 4-year school to that someone could go into and get a degree, a Bachelor of Science in culinary arts or restaurant management, because before that there were none. That was it.
There wasn't anything.
That's actually part of the LRA's history, because we have pictures from the opening of the building and the fundraising that went into it, and the things that had to happen at the legislature to make this a viable idea, and especially where it was. Because if you drive down there, you're down in, it's pretty rural in some of those areas. But I mean, it's like ground zero for like all the good cooking. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is. And, I'm so grateful that we have that opportunity for young people. When I was coming up back in the 80s, I didn't know there were culinary schools. Sophomore year of college, I was at LSU, and my best friend said, "I'm leaving. I'm going to the CIA." I said, "What?"
Are you kidding?
And he said, "No, I'm going to be a chef." I said, "Well, what? Culinary Institute of America? Never heard of it." So my generation, we just learned on the job, and that job became a career.
Right.
And then as Food Network exploded, young people grew up seeing this as an industry that's professional, has opportunity, and can be really cool.
Yeah.
So they chose culinary education as an option for their profession, and that was world-changing.
Yes.
And the John Fo's Culinary Institute offers that to not only students from Louisiana, but all over. And they're all students from all over there. But it's a great program. It's a 4-year program. You get a well-rounded exposure to the culinary world, as well as what I love about it is it's a full university.
Right.
It's not just a culinary school. You can have a college experience. You can join a sorority, a fraternity. You can participate in choir or whatever you want to do. There's sports, football team, basketball, baseball. It's a full university experience. So I like that facet too.
Not just anybody can make the perfect Sazerac. And not just anybody can offer Louisiana's hospitality industry the perfect workers' comp coverage. The Louisiana Restaurant Association's SIF team knows what hospitality businesses need. We truly care about your team's safety and your success. Everybody who's anybody goes with LRA Workers' Comp. Ask around. In this business, word of mouth is everything.
So we have at the LRA, our Education Foundation has the ProStart program. Right now it's in about 60 high schools. We have about 2,000 kids participating. It's juniors and seniors, restaurant management and culinary arts. And you've actually had several students from that program work in your restaurant. But the tie to John Fo's Culinary Institute is the majority of our scholarships go to students that are going to John Fo's Culinary Institute. So I think that's a really cool pipeline that we've kind of created for our local Louisiana-based culinary programs.
Yeah, and I'm so appreciative of that, Wendy, and grateful to the LRA and the Educational Foundation for providing that opportunity. If you want to make the world a better place, it starts with education.
Right, absolutely.
And it starts with giving people an opportunity to become who they want to be. Right. And at the high school level in particular, at all these wonderful ProStart programs around the state, that's amazing that it's in 60. Yeah. Or NOCA Culinary Arts in the Bywater, and I teach there as well, and meet these young people, 13 to 17 years old. And at that age, as you know, that's the most transformative years of our lives. Right. When we move from being children to young adults. Right. And so I view NOCA Culinary Arts, for instance, as kind of a sandbox.
Right.
let's give them the toys, get in there, get your hands dirty, and find out if this is what you want to do. And so this pipeline, you know, I've done demonstrations at ProStart high schools, and I've worked with high schoolers, and I've worked with students at all levels that have that ProStart introduction to culinary. And I think that is a vital part of what's going to make this world a better place.
Now, I'll tell you, there's another link in this pipeline that in my mind that has been, I just, one day it's going to fall into place. But you have all these 4-H programs that are teaching kids about agriculture and commodity type things, and you're teaching them about nutrition and cooking. And there has got to be a way that these folks in 4-H are a pipeline for ProStart.
I agree.
So they have even more of a jump start in understanding the importance of food in your life, as whether you're in the industry or not. And you know, I'm just, you know, when you start to see those,
that is brilliant.
That would be huge.
And it's also a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about, you know, getting to the source of our food and farm to table and learning about our food and what makes it special, that's a natural tie-in.
Right.
And I think any steps we could make towards that would be very, very helpful. I had an employee, he was a Nichols graduate, came to work for me, and then he, you know, had changes in his life and wanted to move on and maybe change careers. And I recommended that he start with the Louisiana Department of Agriculture. You know, they work with farmers, and there's, you know, educational opportunities, and so many, you know, the diversity of jobs in the world of food is astounding. You know, because you go to culinary school doesn't mean you're going to have to be a line cook in a restaurant. In fact, I would say, I don't know the numbers, but, you know, a lot of students that I teach wind up doing something else, whether it's catering or food science, like Sierra. There's a world of opportunities, but the main thing is to get your education. This is the time in your life to do it when you're 18 years old. Don't waste those years. Whatever you study will serve you well in life, one way or the other.
Well, you have I've noticed this from your social media, you have a lot of women in the kitchen.
I do.
You know, it's kind of a weird, I've always thought this was so weird when, you know, growing up, the woman, you know, the wife was always at home taking care of the kids and cooking, and the man was out working. But in a restaurant, it's like the men are in the kitchen, the men are, you know, that historically was how it was. And then women were introduced as servers and hostesses, you know, I think around in the 50s, as the men were going off to war, the women were trained to do other things after they worked in the factories. So what, you know, fast forward all these years, and now there are nights when they're all women in your kitchen.
Yeah,
Tell me,
that's true.
How does that happen?
Well, I think it's just a natural reflection of the world today. You know, I mean, starting with the 15 years that I've been teaching up at Nichols, I would say, you know, now there's more females in my classes than there were before 15 years ago. That's one thing. Maybe the enrollment has changed.
Okay.
But for me, you know, and this is what I learned from Chef Paul. I don't hire from resumes, and of course we're equal opportunity employers. But what I look for is fire and desire, and a willingness to learn. And if I see that hunger, that desire, you're going to get a spot with me.
Okay.
And I do believe I'm a huge proponent in women's rights, and also girl power, and I mean that in the best possible way. And to give people an opportunity maybe they wouldn't get in other places is something that gives me great pleasure.
And, you know, we have followed this young lady that you taught at NOCA. Her name's Sierra Varnado, and just love this story, and I can't wait to see how her career unfolds, because so far it's pretty awesome. So talk about your start with Sierra, and then I'll pick up the ball and we can kind of see where she's at now.
Yeah, I first met Sierra when she was 13 years old in the very first culinary arts class at NOCA, in a kitchen that Emerald and others built for us. And from day one, Wendy, she was impressive. She was so attentive and so diligent and so professional in her work from day one. And, there's no such thing as teacher's pets. But she was my teacher's pet.
You're like, let's clone her.
She was amazing. And I remember one day, Wendy, it was probably the second year there, so she was a sophomore in high school. And some people came in to visit, journalists or potential donors to the school, and they were asking questions of the students, and they asked Sierra, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, she's a sophomore in high school. She said, well, I have a 10-year plan, actually.
I knew you were going to say something like that.
And she was dead serious. Yeah. 14 years old. I have a 10-year plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to go to this school, and then I'm going to open a chain of bakeries. Yeah. I'm going to do a lot of traveling.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, she had it nailed down,
and she's doing it.
Yeah, she's doing it.
So she worked for you.
She did. She came to work with me. I have a picture of her making a 3.5-gallon batch of gumbo in Brigtsen's kitchen at the age of 15 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
And she nailed it.
Oh, gosh.
And then one summer, she was my pastry chef for the whole summer. Yeah. And then has worked with us on and off. Even this year recently, when I needed help in the spring, I was short-staffed. And she came after her regular job to help me out. Just tell me when it comes, Chef Frank. I'm coming. Okay. She texts me all the time, just checking in on you, Chef Frank. How you doing? She'll come visit and we'll chat. But she wound up going to Culinary Institute at Nickel State, John Fo's Culinary Institute in Culinary, and then gravitated towards food science in her second year.
And went over
she's brilliant.
And then
Nichols ended the food science program up there for some reason, I don't know, and then she wanted to finish it, so she went to Holy Cross College in this area and graduated as a food scientist.
And this is where the LRA Education Foundation crossed paths with her story, is because she was a multiple-year scholar. She received a scholarship from us to go to John Foles, and then she moved into culinology, and what she wrote about for her essay was, the committee was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they named her the Jim Funk Scholar, which is like our highest scholarship. So she was working at BEC Packers. I mean, it was just, she's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She's my angel, and she awesome. Deserves everything. Yeah. Everything. She comes from a very humble background, very humble home. And her brilliance, her potential is unlimited, and I'm so grateful to LRA for giving her a chance to succeed.
So, in true fashion, I friended her on Facebook because we featured her. We did a video on her. We interviewed you about your relationship with her and why she was so deserving of this. And since then, I've just kind of followed her path. And she worked at the BEC Packers, and she worked with some of our members on their packaging side. And then she was looking to move on, and she's like, she texted me. She's like, Wendy, do you have any leads? This is kind of, I'm thinking about making a next step. And I was like, here's some people I'll put you in contact with. And then they started fighting over her.
I'll bet.
And I was like, well, that, whoever wins gets to tell the story of how they won with this wonderful person that we have done, and we need to use her to inspire other restaurateurs to invest, in this process. And that's what, you work the system that we have now. You are in the universities, you're in the high schools with the kids on the ground, getting in early and helping them along the way, and they end up in some cases coming to work for you.
Yes, it's a beautiful thing.
It's supposed to work.
Yeah,
that's how it's supposed to work.
And it does work. You
Yes.
know, I meet these wonderful people in my classes, and midway through the semester, I start asking them, you know, what's your plans? When do you graduate? What do you want to do?
Right.
And if they show interest in coming to work for me, I give them a shot.
Yeah.
And I've met the most wonderful people that way. I have 2 Nichols graduates in my kitchen right now, and I love them. They're doing fabulous, and they've learned so much. There's 5 stations in our kitchen. Olivia has crushed all 5 of them, and she's been here since May.
Oh my gosh.
And Emily is on station 3, and she's crushing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just have a lot of fun together.
Yeah.
You know, we have this great relationship based on what we learned about each other at Nichols. And it's my joy in life now at my age and this point in my career is just to stand back and watch them grow.
Right.
Watch them blossom.
So have you had any instances where your, sous chef or your chef or someone is now someone that has their own restaurant and, because you started in someone else's kitchen and then you moved on to your own. Have you had that experience?
Well, yeah, and this is not someone that worked with me at Brigtsen's, but someone that I met probably in my very first class up at John Foles, named Seth Temple, Madison Temple. And Chef Seth is now the chef at a new restaurant called Le Chatenois on St. Charles near Girard. And let me tell you, it is so brilliant, so creative, and so good. And to watch him all these years later, he went to England for a while. He traveled and learned, and he's just rocking it.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the best restaurants in the city.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna put that on the top of my list.
We've been there several times, and and I'll see former students. Off and on. I had one who from that class actually. Kevin Calms, who was in the restaurant a week ago, and he's doing culinary work, not in restaurants, but he's doing contract culinary work and very successful.
So you mentioned earlier you're a feminist. I have noticed this. You are like the cheerleader among the, men in our industry, of women in our industry, just like Miss Susan Spicer, just like Sierra, Olivia in your kitchen, Flirty Girl, Becky Foss, who's, painted the oyster paintings in your dining room. These are things, we come across each other in person, but these are ways we connect, using social media in between. And I think that's really cool.
It is cool. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. I admire, like Flirty Girl has just coming back from some hugely successful new step in her career. She never ceases to amaze me. And same with Becky Foss and all these people. Look at Ella Brennan.
Yeah.
What she did,
she started it all.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so we are all part of this continuum. And I am a feminist, big time.
Yeah. I love it. I love to see it unfold. You comment, you're just a positive person, and I really appreciate that about you. You inspire me to do the same. There is something that has recently come to New Orleans that we want to talk about, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it with you, because you're the one who, I saw it on a list of resources, and then you're the one who first called me about it. Can we talk about Ben's Friends?
Yes.
What is it about this organization that made you pick up the phone and call me?
Thank you, Wendy. New Orleans is known for its food and restaurants, its nightlife, cocktails, drinking, Bourbon Street, et cetera, et cetera. Inevitably, like any place in the world, there's going to be people that have problems with alcohol and or drugs. And New Orleans does. I've certainly seen it in my lifetime in this career. Ben's Friends is a recovery support group for people that are sober, are in recovery, or want to be sober. Sober curious, as they say.
Sober curious.
So Ben's Friends was started many years ago, 30 years ago, by a couple of gentlemen who lost a friend, a chef friend named Ben, to alcohol. And they wanted to do something. And so it's been very successful. It's in many, many cities. It's online, on Zoom. If you want to just sneak a peek at it, go to Ben's Friends, and you can just do a Zoom meeting to learn about it.
And they have them every day, multiple times a day.
Every day.
And if you follow them on Facebook, I see their stories every day. In their stories, they give you a Zoom meeting and in-person meetings. And we have a local chapter in New Orleans now.
We finally do. And Ben's Friends meets every Monday at 11 a.m. at NOCI, the New Orleans Culinary and Hospitality Institute. It's casual, just come in. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. It's free. Just come see. And it's restaurant people, chefs, managers, bartenders, who are in recovery. And my story is I did a lot of drinking and drugs when I was young. And I went sober when I was about 40. And I was sober for 25 years. And I relapsed during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And, I needed help. So I got recovery program experience at Ochsner and at a place called Imagine Recovery, where I did therapy. And it helped me. And now I want to help others.
Right.
And I continue to go to these meetings for myself and for others. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. If you wake up and you're hungover again, and you say this has got to stop, Ben's Friends is for you. You can go to AA, of course, but this is a different option, and it's your tribe, it's your people, it's restaurant people that understand in a way no one else can.
Right. So you said the pandemic. I've been asking this a lot lately because I've realized I am not the same person that I was before.
Nope.
Like, there are fundamental things that have changed about me, what I say, who I associate with, who I follow, just what I read, what I consume. What changed in you? Like,
wow.
What was it?
That's a good question. And I remember, we were closed for 4 months in that summer of 2020 in lockdown and doing what we're supposed to do, staying home. And it was wonderful to be with Marna. We were cooking dinner every night for each other, which we've never done because we work nights.
Right. And you have a dog. Bella.
And we have a dog, And so we were, like everybody, flexing, pivoting, being creative, and how we lived our lives.
I love that you just used the word flex.
Yeah. And we reopened. For me, and looking back, and who knows, but I felt the weight of responsibility, being responsible for my 20 employees and my family, and I felt alone. I felt so alone, even though I had all this support around me. I thought I was on an island and had to make a lot of hard decisions, and that's what got me. But I think what has changed for me mostly in this is, much like Katrina, our perspectives change, and I am grateful for every day that I can come to work.
Yes.
That's what I'm grateful for. We've had to close 3 times during the pandemic, close the restaurant for like 2 weeks, just to be sure everybody's healthy and stuff. So, that's a big price to pay. And so I say this almost every day to my staff. I just want one normal day, one normal boring day.
We were talking to Miss Cindy Brennan the other day, and she said, every day we're looking at each other like, can you believe that just happened? That in all this time, that has never happened. She's like, we're saying that like every day.
So true.
It's like, what you got today?
So true.
You can't make this stuff up. That's what I say.
No, you can't. You don't know what's coming down the pike.
You kind of think you might know, but who knows? You know, she was telling us that like somebody drove their car into the side of Mr. B's one time.
Oh, yes.
She's like trying to get we were trying to just replace the wall, and the Vauquerie Commission was like, you don't have a permit to do this. And or approval or plans, or she's like, somebody drove through the wall. We're putting it back exactly the way it was, and they were like, nope. We gotta go through the process.
Submit your plan.
Kidding?
Jeez.
Oh, she's like, I need to board this up so people don't start sleeping in the restaurant. Oh gosh, yeah, you can't make this stuff up.
No.
So, what would you want to tell someone that is coming into the industry that may have a history of substance abuse or alcohol abuse in their family? Like, what do you need to look out for? What are the words of wisdom, lessons learned?
Yeah, I mean, I had that issue too, you know, and I think it's something that's sneaky.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to fall into a pattern, and that's, you know, what was Anthony Bourdain's book, Kitchen Confidential?
Oh yeah, gosh, that's on my desk. I
lived that.
Yeah.
My generation, you know. In some of these Ben's Friends meetings, in the beginning especially, we talked about the stigma associated with our industry. Well, we earned that stigma. I helped earn that stigma. And so the best way to describe it is it's a cycle.
Yeah.
When I was young and in doing it, I worked hard and I drank hard.
Yeah.
You know, and the amazing thing was I didn't drink on weekends.
That's when you're the busiest.
No, on my days off, I mean.
Oh, okay.
I drank on my work days.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a cycle, and
Okay.
that's common in this industry.
Okay.
It's a pain reward system.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you got to look out for. Find something else to do after work.
Well, and it's interesting that you said that, because my grandmother who raised me was an alcoholic, and I didn't find out until after she died. But then there were some things that made sense. So she always tried to normalize drinking at home, or drinking when we went out. Like when I was 12 years old, I was getting my own cocktail, and it was a Shirley Temple, and she was ordering her cocktail. And it was just something I grew up seeing, but I didn't really get it.
Right.
And then now I have to, I go to a lot of events. I don't drink at these events much anymore, because it's not as fun as opening a bottle of champagne and hanging out on my back porch.
Right. Well, the real, I think the challenge is that most of us in the restaurant industry work nights.
Yeah.
And I call that a parallel universe. Other people get off work and they may have dinner and go out to eat. They may have dinner and go to a movie or do something like that. Our free time is in the mornings.
Yes.
And that's something to recognize. And I love it now. I get up before sunrise now, and I drink my coffee for 3 hours. That's my free time.
Yeah.
But the easiest thing to do when you work nights is to go out after and go drinking.
Because you can kind of sleep in and you have that extra time.
I mean, what else is there to do and all that? But you want to, socialize with your coworkers and see other restaurant people and stuff like that. So just be careful.
Yeah.
Don't do it every night.
Yeah.
It's okay to drink.
Yeah.
But don't let it get control of you.
Yeah. And that all things in moderation, including moderation. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I think this is going to be great information for our listeners. And we hope that by you telling your stories that we inspire others to do so. And especially in the education realm, I think we could use a lot more restaurateurs like looking at that direction as something that they could volunteer for in their, no free time. But, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to really move and propel our industry forward.
Thank you, Wendy, for the opportunity. And you used the right word, investment. As a restaurateur, invest in young people, invest in education with your time, and it'll come back to you.
From the thread count of the sheets to the praline on the pillow, Louisiana hotels know a thing or two about hospitality, and the Louisiana Restaurant Association knows a thing or two about workers' comp. Everybody who's anybody goes with LRA Workers' Comp.
Thank you for listening to the Louisiana Restaurant Association's We Live to Eat podcast. Please join us for future podcasts where we'll discuss restaurants, food, and culture in the state where we live to eat. Until then, bon appetit.